thank you for joining us here at Ad Age as we break down all of the commercial winners and losers of Super Bowl 57. I'm Janine Poggi, editor of Ad Age, and I'm joined by my fellow Ad Agers today who are just recuperating from our long week or long month. I'm joined today by our creativity editor, Tim Nudd, news editor, EJ Schultz, and senior reporter, Adrian Pasquarelli. Good morning, everyone. How's everyone holding up?
We made it. We made it through. Yeah, no, it was a late night, but it was a fun night.
Doing better than the Philadelphia fans.
There you go. There you go. We still have more. We're here this morning to break down all of the winners and losers, give some analysis, fun factoids that maybe we only care about here inside the walls of Ad Age, but hope you all enjoy. So let's talk about the biggest surprise of the night. Anyone that, while we were watching, there are a few surprises left for us, I think, when we actually tune into the game, but anything that you all really stopped and took notice of?
Yeah, I mean, I thought the Tubi screen interruption was a fun moment. I think we knew something was going to happen with Tubi beyond the in-game spot that they had. We weren't quite sure what. And anything that makes people sort of scream at each other in their living rooms, it was a fun moment.
I don't know about you guys, but I immediately assumed my 3-year-old had grabbed the remote, and I was trying to see what she was up to. But I'm wondering, do you guys think that the Tubi branding came across enough during that period, or was everyone just so distracted and trying to figure out what happened that maybe that kind of got lost in the shuffle?
Yeah, my reaction when I saw Tubi on there and that my husband was sitting near the remote, I said the same thing. And I'm like, well, how did that even happen? How did we get there that Tubi came up? So I did see it. I wonder if others did, but it was really pretty prominent, I think, on the screen.
Yeah, I mean, I think their whole thing was just being disruptive, right? Disrupting the moment. And then probably on social, they get their big boost on social, even if people are not looking at the screen at the moment.
Adrian, what do you think?
I feel like the danger from the other Tubi spot, I remember the rabbits, but then this morning I was like, who was that for? I couldn't remember, which I knew it was some streaming, but I couldn't remember what brand it was for. All I remembered was the rabbits in the rabbit hole, and that was great, but then I couldn't remember who it was advertising, and I feel like that's always the danger with some of these.
Trailer for Donnie Darko too.
That's what I was, yes, very, very nice, Paul.
For those of you watching at home, feel free to join into the conversation, leave comments, questions. We'll try to bring them into our conversation. Let's start with the biggest winners. Tim, you are helping us do our ad review this year and provided some pretty insightful analysis on all of these. What was one of your top picks?
Well, for me, at the top or definitely near the top was the NFL spot. I thought it was really, really cool. NFL, I felt like they had a little bit of a miss last year when they had the sort of animated guys. I'm not sure that really broke through. They've had some wonderful spots over the years, but I thought this one was really interesting because it's such a different direction for them, focusing on flag football, having a star that this is actually her first ever commercial, Deanna Flores. She's the captain of the Mexican women's national flag football team. So not someone that viewers knew really going into this, but I thought it was so well done. The cameos were perfect. There's Billie Jean King. She was so great in it, just with one word. And,
Mr. Beast was in here also, right? I saw Beast. Him. He was trending on my feed last night.
Yeah, very targeted cameos, to bring in different audiences. But having a Hispanic woman front a campaign for the NFL just kind of tells you how far the NFL has come. So I thought this one was really, really well done. Brian Buckley directed it, did a wonderful job. And I thought this was a big crowd pleaser.
Why flag football? Why is the NFL leaning into this in this moment?
Well, I think there's just growing concern, has been for years, about the safety of the sport. So I think to keep football popular, you got to convert some kids over to flag from tackle. A lot of parents don't want their kids playing tackle today. So, whether or not kids playing flag will ever play in the NFL, I'm not sure that's the point. It's more about just getting kids to play football, whatever that means. NFL sees itself as kind of a steward of football, not just the steward of its own league. And so, yeah, I mean, I think, and obviously they need people of color and women, more viewers for the league. So it was very strategic, that ad, but the strategy to me wasn't really like showing because it was so entertaining.
Let's remember too, the Pro Bowl this year was flag football. So maybe like flag football is the next pickleball.
Exactly. Yeah. Deanna was one of the coaches, I think, at that. And no one knew her then either. But, and I think her parents didn't even know that she was going to be in this commercial until this weekend. And I think the NFL filmed that the family watching together. So I haven't seen footage of that, but that'd be a fun one to dig up.
Pickleball, I really thought would have a moment in the Super Bowl. I thought someone would have leaned into pickleball and used it in their creative. I was actually surprised not to see anyone play on pickleball, but
yeah,
next year. So one of my favorites was the Dunkin spot starring Ben Affleck and the cameo by J-Lo. Let's take a look at that one.
Welcome to Dunkin', a new special. Dunkin' run, medium or large coffee, get a donut for an incremental $1. Like, how can it be this inexpensive and good?
Cream, no sugar.
I'm just gonna have to just give you 10 munchkins. You look a little lost. 1 second, I'm trying to find the bagels. Do I look familiar?
Oh.
Should I be in it, or do you want just a self-portrait?
What are you doing here?
Ask me if I'm
Is this what you do when you say you're going to work all day?
I gotta go, guys.
Grab me a glazed.
So enjoying it. I saw it a lot and it's still making me laugh. EJ, the significance, this is Dunkin's first Super Bowl commercial, which might be surprising to some. Talk about like their, buying in at this time. And obviously Ben Affleck is a known Dunkin fan.
Right. That's a great point. I mean, we see so many celebrities in the game and we wonder at some ads like why they're even in this particular ad. But this one's a perfect fit, right? Affleck, very well known for being a Dunkin' fan. Then, of course, the J-Lo appearance at the end is perfect. And I love the way the ad just sort of stops. And that the glazed lines, too, I'm sure took off on social media. And they were pretty quiet about the ad buy, actually. We didn't find out about it until a few days before the game. They didn't do a lot of hyping of it ahead of time. They had maybe an Instagram post or two. But I think it worked well for them.
Well, Ben Affleck had just been like sort of in rotation in the news with all of the Grammys appearance and the little memes that were coming up. So it was pretty good timing for them also that Ben Affleck was just sort of popping on social.
I was kind of wondering, was that Grammy thing maybe going to be part of the ad? But I guess not.
Yeah. So
it all feels very purposeful.
It does, right? It feels like it was all connected. But, we talked about celebrities. Celebrities, obviously a massive part. But two of the ads that did really well last night did not have celebrities. We had the Amazon commercial starring a dog. We really come to know, I think, at this point that people love commercials about dogs. And that one did really well. And then the farmer's dog won USA Today's ad meter. So, it's interesting. I think it's a trend yet again. Animals, babies, kids, people love them. Tim, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I thought they were both great. The Amazon spot, we didn't really know was going to be in the game. It wasn't pre-released. They normally do pre-release, but I thought this was a great story. I mean, it came in the fourth quarter and we were busy working and I stopped and watched it from start to finish and actually rewound it and watched it again because I thought the storytelling was just, super sweet. The whole game had been so full of celebrities, of course. So it's nice to see, just a sort of a quieter but really fun with a twist ending. This was a great twist ending. It reminded me a lot of, we were talking about this on Slack last night a little bit, like it reminded me a lot of like the John Lewis commercials, like the Monty the Penguin and Buster the Boxer. It had that sort of vibe to it. Had, shades of COVID. Everyone's kind of still working from home and all that. So that felt sort of relatable to many of us. 90-second buy, lets the storytelling breathe a little bit. So I thought it was great. And no, you can't buy a puppy on Amazon.
I thought it was interesting because really the last recent years, Amazon has used the Super Bowl to advertise Alexa. So this was a departure from that strategy of recent years and more of just a general brand building spot.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I wonder, maybe everyone's got Alexas now. You maybe don't need any more market penetration for Alexa. But yeah, I thought this was a nice way, and they also moved away from celebs, and they normally have celebs. Last year I think it was Colin Jost and Scarlett Johansson. For many years in a row, they had sort of really funny, really well done commercials. But this was sort of a return to sort of non-celebrity storytelling, which can be really effective too. Plus, you don't have to pay for the celeb.
Yeah, and I think trying to return to get into some of this long form storytelling with their holiday spots, really leaning into that John Lewis type, like you said, angle to accomplish that awareness.
Yeah, Adrian, one of the other ones, The Farmer's Dog, it's a D2C brand, and we don't typically see those kinds of brands advertised during the Super Bowl. They actually won the ad meter. Again, another spot, no celebrities in it. A pretty, in comparison to all of the humorous ads that we saw during the night, it definitely had, a more of a serious tone to it. What did you make of that? What do you make of a company like The Farmer's Dog advertising in the Super Bowl?
Well, it is interesting that two of these really highly performing spots both featured dogs. I think it shows everybody loves dogs. What's interesting about The Farmer's Dog is, and their subscription service, they offer healthy meals for dogs. Humans could eat it. They're nearly a decade old. And before the pandemic, they were even seeing triple-digit growth. And then when dog ownership, pet ownership exploded during the pandemic, during COVID lockdowns, they saw growth, but I think they also saw more competition. So I think buying a spot in something like the Super Bowl helps them really put a stake in the ground and drive awareness for their brand when there are more rivals out there.
Interesting. Another brand,
and the spot was so relatable.
Another brand, I want to stick with you a minute, that was also an interesting one that I think was a little bit of a surprise, was the Temu ad, the online marketplace. Tell us a little bit about that company. That's definitely a brand I think a lot of people maybe watching were not familiar with before the Super Bowl.
Yes, Temu is very few people might have been familiar with it. I was not. They are owned by a Chinese company. They just opened in the U.S. or started shipping in the U.S. In the fall, and they had a huge buy. They bought 2 spots in the game and then 2 after the game. They're like a discounter online, and it's so interesting how we are seeing more of these value conscious saving sites. I think we'll talk about Rakuten in a little bit, but all of these advertising in the Super Bowl, it says that brands know consumers are looking to save a buck perhaps in this economy. And I think we'll see that trend continue into the spring.
Really interesting. I want to give a shout out to those of you who are watching at home. Thank you for tuning in. We have Jorge from Mexico, Janice from Kenya, John from Canada, Doreen from Kenya, Catalina from Turkey. Thank you so much for tuning in. As a reminder, if you have any questions or comments, leave them on our social channels. We will try to bring them into the conversation. Let's switch gears. Let's talk about some of the ads that we thought missed the mark. Tim, anything from you that really fell short?
Rob Gronkowski missing the field goal.
Did he miss it though? Like, I don't know. On Slack last night, I know it's always hard. The angles are hard, but I could have sworn that one in. I
thought so too at first, and then I downloaded the video and sort of enlarged it, and he definitely missed it.
Okay.
If he had, this is Rob Gronkowski too. If he had made it, I think he would have been incredibly happy and jumping up and down. Instead, he sort of sank to his knees and.
Can we just watch it? Let's just see. Let's just watch it one more time.
Rob Gronkowski kicking for $10 million. His trainer, Adam Vinatieri, with the Gronkowski family looking on. Here we go. The kick is up. It's no good. He missed it. But you still win. FanDuel is still giving customers a piece of $10 million in bonus bets. Check your accounts tomorrow.
All right, so I had a lot of questions about this because it was pegged going into this as live, and it says live there. And like a part of me felt like it didn't feel live. The production quality, I was kind of surprised by it.
Yeah, well, I think the production quality was low enough that I felt like it was live, I guess. But yeah, the whole thing was kind of odd. Like, okay, so if he'd have made it, the fans would have gotten the same thing as if he had missed it. Like the stakes, there's no stakes there. So like, what was the point? Like, I know that you can't have, that's the problem with a contest or a challenge like that. Like if he misses it and they don't do something for fans, it's a huge downer. So I think they were probably hoping he would make it.
That was the most predictable thing ever, though, that they were going to give away something no matter what. And it was 100% live. I confirmed that with sources because I was wondering the same thing, but it was live.
Yeah.
EJ, what did you think of the Remy Martin ad? Obviously, this is an interesting year for the alcohol category overall, with Anheuser-Busch giving up its category exclusivity, and we had some newcomers in the game. Remy Martin had their Serena Williams ad. Let's take a look at that one.
I don't know what to say, really. We're in the dark right now, and we can stay here, or we can fight our way back to the light. 1 inch at a time. The inches we need are everywhere around us. They are in every break of the game, every second. On this team, we tear ourselves and everyone around us to pieces for that inch. We claw with our fingernails for that inch, because we know that's going to make the difference between winning and losing. Now, I can't make you do it. You got to look at the person next to you. Now, I think you're going to see someone who will go that inch with you, because when it comes down to it, you're going to do the same for them. That's a team, ladies and gentlemen. Now, what are you going to do?
EJ, what are your thoughts on that?
A lot going on there, but Serena is obviously a powerful endorser and has done great things for Nike, Gatorade, so many brands. I think, just tracking the what social media reaction, there's a lot of questioning, like what was she necessarily doing in this ad? And then also, what was this doing for the brand? What was the message the brand was trying to send here? Serena's also in another alcohol ad, Michelob Ultra as well. And the Remy ad was obviously trying to reach a channel Any Given Sunday, the movie. But I'm wondering, did you guys think that movie is still in consciousness enough where people kind of got that right away? Or?
No, I don't at all. And based upon our Twitter feed, like when we were tweeting out that it was from that, a lot of people chimed in saying they did not know that obviously that the Al Pacino role that he played, that she was recreating that part of that speech. But a lot of people did not seem to know it was from that movie.
It's also hard for her to sort of, here's your task is to recreate an Al Pacino speech. Like, good luck with, get some acting lessons before this, maybe. But I mean, she's awesome in general, but this was a tough ask for her, I feel like.
And the comments on social were, which was interesting, like, why have a sports legend who is really a solo player come in and talk about a team? Teamwork, which was just an interesting observation, not one that I necessarily thought of watching it, but that was the other thing I was seeing on social media, is this idea of like, Serena doesn't play on a team necessarily, so why have her as the spokesperson?
And what does teamwork have to do with cognac? Like, I'm totally confused.
That's and Remy, it's a well-known brand, but do they do enough marketing to have enough of a narrative out there where there probably is some connection out in their marketing, but it's not in awareness enough where people can instantly make that connection by seeing a Super Bowl ad.
Yeah.
I want to talk about some of the trends that we saw with the in-game ads. Obviously, celebrity is always a big one. We talked about some of them. Any celebrity spots that stood out to you, or did they all start melding together and blurring together at this point?
It might be easier to put together a list of celebrities who were not in ads, actually.
Seems fair. It seems fair. Yeah. And some of the spots, and we've seen this a lot, like they just pile them in, right? You'll have like a lot of celebrities in just one ad. DraftKings did this, Michelob Ultra did this. You have a lot of different star power, and you wonder if like those 1 second cameos do anything for a brand. Like when Martha Stewart shows up at the end of Skechers with Snoop Dogg, like what does that do when you have like a 1 second cameo in these?
I thought the Elton John cameo was effective, and especially because they didn't signal that in any way before they released the ad early, but they didn't signal it in any way on social or anything until they actually released the ad. So it did come as a bit of a surprise for folks watching that ad. And I thought that was a nice ad overall.
I agree. I feel like the problem is when you substitute celebrities in for an idea. If you don't really have an idea, we're just going to put celebs in here because they're instantly recognizable. People lean in and engage with the ad right away. But like if the concept is weak, the celeb's not going to save it. Quite the opposite. In fact, it just ends up looking sort of like the DoorDash thing. I felt like, okay, here's 3 celebs, in 30 seconds, hard to keep track of what they're even saying. And so, but on the other side, ones that did a little better had a fun concept. Like I thought the Pepsi stuff with Ben Stiller and Steve Martin was really fun, because that's sort of at least an idea. That's a fun idea. And we talked about Doritos as well. I thought that was epically silly, which often does well in the game as well. So yeah, I think just the problem is when you just use a celebrity without really having a good idea behind it.
I thought the Booking.com one was a good example of that, because no one can argue that Melissa McCarthy isn't amazing. And I just felt like they put her in there and forced a concept and it didn't work. Adrienne, what did you think of that one?
Yeah, it felt like it just fell short and missed the mark. She's a great singer. It was great to see her husband, that little cameo he had, landscape architect, not gardener. But I wasn't very impressed, although that song did stick in my head for a bit after the game.
I think
I'm not going to sing it now, though.
To me, that one was a good example. Like, there's a 2-minute cut of that, and that felt like such a big thing that probably, in fact, it does work fairly well at 2 minutes. And then when you try to fit it into 30 seconds, you're just jumping from one scene to the next. And by the time it's over, it's almost like you didn't really get a sense of Melissa's humor. And like, she's really funny. And there's stuff in the 2-minute that's like funnier than any of what was in the 30. So
another good example of that one, the one that you can kind of like watch later, is the Planters, the roast of Mr. Peanut. Like, I think the 30-second of just doing a quick roast of him does not like hold up. But then if you go and look at like the extended cut of it, like there's much funnier jokes that are in that. So that's another example of that one.
Yeah.
Is this a good time to talk about Maya Rudolph and M&M's?
I was just going to say, this is a perfect time, EJ. Yes, we'll talk about M&M's. Obviously, M&M's, most people are aware in some form that M&M's tried to pull off this like 3-week stunt involving, first saying that their spokes candies were going on a hiatus, and then bringing them back, having Maya Rudolph as their new spokesperson. All of this to culminate in, a commercial in the game that I think we all pretty much agree fell flat. EJ, you want to talk about just like the idea of this M&M stunt, and did this go like too far?
Well, first of all, M&M's did get a ton of earned media starting a couple of weeks ago with the announcement that, that they were going to sort of pause the spokes candies, which we all saw right through from the beginning. But a lot of media that doesn't really cover advertising that closely took it incredibly seriously. So they got a lot of headlines. And then they came along with the ad during the game where, and they tease us that somehow Maya Rudolph was going to rename M&M's and turn them into clam. Well, that's completely ridiculous, obviously. But I think, it does point to, if you were to watch that singular ad as a standalone ad, you would wonder what the heck is going on here. And then you do see the little candy M&M sort of crying for help in the back, which if you have taken the time to follow the storyline, maybe you get it. But I'm just wondering, did people pay enough attention to that beforehand to get that?
Yeah, M&M's put a lot of confidence that people were following along on social in the weeks leading up to the game, but then also because they had that 15-second post-game ad that sort of like wrapped all of this up with the interview with the M&M's after the fact, like relying that people after the game were going to still care. Like there was just too much of this concept relying on people caring and following a storyline throughout. And I really do think when you have something like the Super Bowl, like that creative in-game spot needs to be able to stand on its own in some way.
Yeah, I think the Super Bowl is an annual reminder that simple stories well told is the way to go.
That's very true. I think Downey suffered from the same thing, which was they had a whole teaser campaign where Danny McBride, which you didn't actually see his face in the teasers, but he had the sweatshirt over his head. So he was talking about how he didn't believe that Downey Unstoppables works very well and so on. And so the beginning of the in-game spot, he literally says, "I was wrong about Downey Unstoppables." And the viewer who hasn't been following along, 99% of the country, is like, well, why did he not like Downey Unstoppables before? So I think marketing teams can get pretty caught up in like, oh, well, the consumers know our brand. They know what we're doing. And that's not a great assumption to make usually.
let's talk about another trend. Nostalgia has been one that we've seen run throughout Super Bowls, especially over the last couple of years with brands bringing back iconic TV shows and movies. We saw Rakuten revive Cher and Clueless with Alicia Silverstone. We had Caddyshack with Michelob Ultra. There was the Grease revival with T-Mobile and John Travolta. So a lot of different, big movies, TV shows, and Popcorners, of course, with Breaking Bad. Let's take a look at the Popcorners one.
Yo, these are the bomb!
And they're air popped, not fried.
Popcorners? You're an artist.
Actually, Jesse, it's just basic ingredients. No, we don't eat our own supply.
Mr. White!
Jesse.
Everyone's gonna want to taste. What are these? We call them popcorners. Type! We've got 6 signature flavors, yo.
7! You make 7! 7 works.
Yeah.
I like that one. That one was good.
Did well on ad meter.
Yeah. I feel like nostalgia is effective just because people are immediately familiar, right? It gives them a great feeling of warmth and familiarity, but you have to make the product central, or the product can get kind of forgotten. I think that's what Popcorners did really well, is like the product is really central to the storytelling. And some of the other ones, like the T-Mobile ad, that could be a Verizon ad maybe, if like it doesn't really, there's not something specific about the brand. So I think that's the danger with nostalgia, is brand gets lost.
I do think Rakuten did do that with its spot with Alicia Silverstone. I think that was central to the spot. Adrian, what did you think of that one?
Yeah, I think they did a better job this year than last year with the casino spot, by tapping into like the ultimate shopper, Cher Horowitz, and kind of helping to explain what Rakuten actually is and what they can do for shoppers. And for nostalgia, I think one reason it works is because it kind of taps into different generations. For me personally, my tween daughter has seen Clueless and she liked the spot, and she was interested in it. And then obviously I grew up with the movie, so it's kind of doubling up on that appeal.
And there's a fashion element too in it. Christian Siriano, the fashion designer, makes a cameo in it, and there's elements of giving away some of the clothes from the spot itself, so that adds to it, I think, as well.
Yeah, it's helpful that it's also during New York Fashion Week, so anyone tapping into that, tuned into New York fashion, would understand what's going on there too.
DJ Autos is always a important category to the Super Bowl. It seemed like it was a little bit lackluster this year, the category itself, in terms of the number of auto advertisers in the game. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we only had 3 automakers buy in for a total of 4 ads, which matches the total from a couple years ago, which was sort of a modern low. And definitely lower than last year, when a bunch of brands decided to come in and promote their electric vehicles. 3 of the 4 ads this year still promoted electric vehicles. I think, GM, obviously, with Will Ferrell and the Netflix partnership, I think that went over pretty well with audiences. And I think Kia's Binky ad, again, sort of a simple story, pretty well told. I think that did pretty well on some of the early rankings we've seen in. Stellantis, which owns Jeep and Ram, went for the humor this year. We can debate how well they did. I don't know if, Tim, you want to weigh in here on the Ram, the Ram innuendo-filled ad.
I did not enjoy the Ram ad very much. I thought the Jeep ad was better. The Jeep ad was fun-loving, and but the Ram ad, I cringed a little bit during that one.
That one seemed to, like, there were some people on social that loved it, though. It got a lot of mixed reactions.
I mean, pharma parody is like the oldest trick in the book, right? We've seen a million of them over the years. I don't know, premature electrification, like, just sort of, it didn't strike me the right way at all.
And this was for a vehicle that's not coming out until the end of 2024, the first Ram sort of electric mainstream truck. And they're trying to direct people to a website to start reserving their spot to then stand in line for the vehicle. But they didn't reveal a lot about the vehicle itself. It was more just sort of pointing at fears people have of electric cars, and then sort of suggesting that their electric truck is going to solve all that, but they didn't really share why.
And it also felt to me like 60 seconds. They could have done that in 30 seconds because it was the same joke over and over again for like 45 seconds or so, which was a little bit, a little overkill, I thought. And I think, EJ, they pushed that to the fourth quarter, right? In the hopes that some kids might be in bed.
Right. That's what the CMO told me, Olivier Francois. And back to the Jeep ad for a quick second. That was actually positioned as a sequel to the very well-received Earth's Odyssey spot they did last year, which they'd actually considered putting in the Super Bowl. That's the ad that has the animal noises replacing the 2001 Space Odyssey theme that I think we actually ranked as one of our top 10 ads of last year. Tim, do you think this one met that bar?
I liked it. I mean, I didn't think it was the the best spot on the game necessarily, but I did like it. I like the energy. Again, like animals are a safe bet on the Super Bowl. The CGI I thought could have been slightly better, perhaps, but overall I thought that was a fun minute of entertainment.
EJ, you talked about the GM Netflix partnership and that spot. One of the other trends we saw are these brands sort of buddying up and going out, working together for their spots. You had General Motors and Netflix, Michelob Ultra and Netflix, Peacock even like name dropped M&M's and Google in its ad. The Molson Coors one partnered with DraftKings to be able to bet on its spot. So you're seeing this somewhat newer trend of brands working together. What do you all think of that? Why are we seeing this?
Well, Molson told me when I asked him about this trend that they really needed to make this moment count, especially for them. And I think it's really just another way to break through the clutter for the Super Bowl. There's so much competition. Every brand is looking to get the most out of that $7 million buy. So adding this extra element like Netflix did with GM or Molson with DraftKings really helps accomplish that.
And we talk about these integrated campaigns and brands trying to extend beyond the game. The Molson, I think, was probably effective because people literally did have a stake in it, a real stake, trying to predict what was going to happen in the ad. And they guarded that ad, I can tell you, because we tried to get it early. They didn't release that thing till after the contest closed. So, we'll see how that ended up doing for them, but interesting approach.
I chuckled at the blue moon at the end. I thought that was a great sort of one of the best endings of a spot this year.
There was a conversation amongst some beer nerds on social about, do we really want to remind people that Blue Moon is owned by this corporate brewing giant? There's a lot of debate going on about that.
I would love to follow the beer nerds on social media. I can only imagine what that conversation is. So one of the things, and we talked about this in some of these ads, is the QR code that popped up in some of these to like go and watch the episode of Full Swing on Netflix, in the partnership with Michelob, to be able to go Limit Break, which is a Web3 gaming company, there's a QR code there to go get, 10,000 NFTs tied to one of their games. Coinbase last year obviously came out big swing with their QR code centric ad. Did those work this year? Is it now just something, Tim, you think we're going to see in the background of a lot of ads, just having these QR codes there?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's, it doesn't hurt to add one in. You get a direct element there where people can immediately connect with you if they so choose. I mean, nothing's going to be as creatively weird as the Coinbase was. I mean, that was sort of a wild minute, or maybe even more than that. These creatively this year, I didn't think anything really stood out with the QR codes. So it's sort of just it's another tag you can add on. I mean, remember when hashtags was the big thing, and I think it's just another sort of ancillary element. But for companies that build their campaign around, specific items that you can buy or win, I mean, clearly it's a very quick way to get millions of people to try to scan and sort of visit you directly.
I do want to talk about efforts around DE&I and how brands were thinking about and prioritizing, inclusivity both in front of and behind the camera. We, the last 2 years, have been sending out at Age, like every brand that airs a national spot in the game, a list of questions about how they're approaching diversity and inclusion. And we got some analysis back. And right now, as of where we stand from what we received back, of the 74 celebrities confirmed in the Super Bowl, 25 identify as female, while 49 identify as male, 22 are Black, 5 Hispanic or Latinx, and none identify as AAPI. And these are for celebrities specifically, not for actors in the ads that are not, called out by the brand as being an identifiable celebrity. Tim, we also looked at like the director count, and I think the diversity there is pretty paltry. 3 directors identify as Asian American Pacific Islander, 2 identified Hispanic, and none are Black, which is actually probably a bit worse than even what we had at this point last year in our tally. What do you all make of like the efforts? Do you think that's been waning, that it was not as prioritized in the conversations that maybe you had with brands that you're covering, that diversity was top of mind when they were creating their Super Bowl spots?
Yeah, I mean, Lindsay Rittenhouse did the story this past week, talking to a lot of folks about why this is. Obviously, it's disappointing, and we're continuing to talk to folks about how the industry can improve in this way. But yeah, it's certainly disappointing. You don't want to think that a few years after summer of 2020 that these priorities are going away for the industry. I'm curious, particularly around Super Bowl. Clients feel a lot of pressure around Super Bowl. Does that mean they want to go with tried and true directors and talent?
Seems that way when you have the same directors on multiple spots, even in
100%, yeah. And there's certain directors who are, they have a reputation as Super Bowl directors. The danger is then you sort of tend to get the same old creative approach, right? So people marketers always talk about taking risks, and it shouldn't be a risk to go with a more diverse cast and crew. But I think unfortunately it's seen that way by many clients. So with the stakes so high, I think a lot of clients just naturally go towards safety, and I think that's a mistake. It's not the way to stand out, really. So I think we're going to hear a little bit more in the coming weeks about why this was on this Super Bowl, and I think it just needs to be reiterated that there's reasons to go with more diverse talent. It's it's more representative of the country, and you just can tell certain stories a little better. So hopefully. This isn't going to set the tone for the next few years.
I mean, the NFL did a good job of it with its spot that we talked about. The other one that, in terms of our analysis and the data that we received back, that actually provided some of the most information was from the Jesus rebrand ads. They were incredibly diverse. I do want to talk about them before we wrap up and get your thoughts. They were making a lot of buzz on social media, both for the creative, which some called powerful, and then also for the backstory and who is funding those ads. Thoughts on how those landed?
I think it was noticeable departure from so much of what we saw, which was gags and comedy. And for this year, and this has been an ongoing trend of brands not wanting to take on bigger causes or even try an inspirational campaign. So from just a purely creative standpoint, the Jesus ads to me really stood out, and they were sort of halting and made you watch. What did you guys think?
Yeah, I was torn about the creative approach. Like, yes, it was arresting. Like when you go quieter on the Super Bowl, oftentimes you can break through that way, weirdly enough. We've seen it before with Jeep portraits or Ram Farmer from years ago. Like these ads kind of followed that playbook, like black and white photos, rousing or sort of emotional music behind it. But really, it's really just stock imagery plus a song. It's not really that creative per se. So, I give them good marks for adequately doing it. But, religion in general comes with such baggage. And I think, people were not necessarily reacting to the creative when they're watching these ads as they were reacting to the fact that here's Jesus being promoted to you. It can feel preachy. If you're not Christian, it can feel, uninclusive. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of questions behind who's backing that work. A lot of potential hypocrisy in that message. And I think that people, at least the chatter that I saw on Twitter was more about the politics than the creative.
Yeah, which is always the risk, right? And sort of going into any sort of social issues or anything with a more serious message, which I think is why we saw almost all of the Super Bowl ads have a humorous tone. I think in my count last, there was only 6 out of all of them that even took serious or maybe not funny approach to the commercials. So it speaks to probably why many brands do lean into humor and lightheartedness.
But religion aside, do you guys think there might be a little bit of a comeback for brands trying to get inspirational again next year, just because there is this vacuum? And if you do it, it can be really well. It can end up being one of the better ads of a game. We've seen that over the years. It obviously is risks spectacular failure as well. But I'm just kind of curious if we might see a little bit of a comeback, just because if you're trying to be different, that might be a way to be different again.
I really do hope so. I feel like we have gone a couple of years where a lot of things are just starting to blur together. I think it becomes harder to remember some of these and the brands that are doing them. And I think we need at some point really soon a Super Bowl where the creative sort of stands out and people take risks. And I think everyone has been playing it a bit safe the last couple of years.
To me, I think the farmer's dog example is a really good one. Like, just, it's a reassuring example that, like, you don't need a celebrity and you don't need comedy. You just need a really well-told story. Like, that ad is actually, I think, underrated for the craft on it. Like, the director did an amazing job, and it just, you know, there was a truth to it. Like, everyone who owns a pet or owns a dog, like, can feel the truth there. So if you have a cultural truth or a human truth and you can somehow tie that to a product truth, like, you don't need a celebrity, you don't need humor, you just need that story. And you need that story, to EJ's point, have it be simple and have it connect in a loud environment that people are absorbing this stuff. So I thought Farmer's Dog was really impressive to me. And Amazon, you expect them to do great work. This first-time advertiser really knocked it out of the park, and I hope we see more of that stuff.
Well, we could keep talking about this for hours, and we have been. So I appreciate everyone tuning in. That's a wrap on Super Bowl 57. Thank you to my colleagues, EJ Schultz, Adrian Pasquarelli, and Tim Nudd for joining me to break down these Super Bowl commercials. You can find out more, rewatch the ads, read our reviews, and dig into some more of the Super Bowl news at adage.com/Super Bowl. As always, thank you to our Ad Age crew, Lauren Ciardio, Arabella Breck, and Anna Sekula for helping to make this live stream happen. And join us on March 7th for Ad Age's Wellness Revolution Conference. You can find out more on adage.com/thewellnessrevolution. Thanks everyone for tuning in.